Speaking with Confidence, the podcast dedicated to helping you unlock the power of effective public speaking. I'm Tim Newman, a recovering college professor turned communication coach, and I'm thrilled to guide you on a journey to becoming a powerful communicator. I want to thank each and every one of you for your support. It truly means the world to me. If you have questions or if you want something covered on the podcast, just send me a message. Please visit timnewmanspeaks.com to get your free ebook, Top 21 Challenges for Public Speakers and How to Overcome Them. Today's guest is Annie Korzen. Annie was the recurring character Doris Klumpus on Seinfeld, and she has recently become a TikTok sensation in her 80s. She has written humorous essays for the New York Times, LA Times, and many more. She also has performed her solo shows on 3 continents. Annie has had recent press on Access Daily, Inside Edition, the CBS Evening News, and wait for it, Dr. Phil. Annie, welcome to the show. I am so excited to talk to you. This is just a true blessing.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to it.
So, before we really get into this, how long have you and Benny been married?
Benny and I, well, before I answer that, I'll tell you that we met in February and got married in April because he's a Dane. Benny's a Dane, and he needed his green card.
Okay.
And my friend said, "You can't do this. You're marrying a stranger. He'll get his papers. You'll never see him again." And I said, "No, I think this feels real." And that was 60 years ago, over 60
Wow.
years ago.
God bless you. That is number one. That's amazing. It really is. And there was one thing in your book that really, really resonated with me because my wife and I have some of these same conversations. When you got rid of his clothes and he went to the thrift store and he bought the hat and the bowling shoes, were they the same things that you dropped off?
Yes. I snuck into his closet because he never gets rid of it. My husband is one of those people who never throws anything away. And he walks around in tattered, stained, washed out clothing. And I knew he wouldn't notice it because he just grabs for a pile. So when he was out, I took some things, I donated them to the thrift store. And a week later, he said, "Well, I went clothes shopping." He was so proud of himself.
Oh
And he had
gosh,
bought all the stuff, all the same crap that I had thrown out.
that's funny. It's hilarious. But it my wife and I have some of those same conversations. But let's really get into this. You're a TikTok influencer. How did that happen, and how much time and work goes into doing what you do?
Well, how it happened was quite accidental. I thought I'm a storyteller and I do solo shows and I do, appearances of telling stories. And I was talking to a young friend. I'm 86, she's 30. And I said, I wish I could find a larger audience for my thoughts. Maybe I should put some little clips on Instagram, however that works, since I don't know how to use Instagram. And she said, "Oh no, Instagram is so toxic. It's so last century. You have to be on TikTok." And I said, "You're crazy. Who wants to see me on TikTok?" And by the way, I know we will talk about my book, but I have to say, one of the themes of my book is you should always answer within reason. You should always answer, "Yeah, why not?" when somebody offers you something that you're not sure about. So I thought this was a stupid idea, but I thought, what could it hurt? I said, "Yeah, why not?" And she said, "Trust me, you will go viral." And shortly after we started, I did. And we started a week before lockdown. A week before the
Wow,
pandemic is when we started.
that's
And the rest
amazing.
is still a total surprise to me. I'm not sure I understand it. I mean, I'm not complaining. I love the attention, but I found a whole new audience. As a matter of fact, when I go out in the street, most of the people who stop me on the street are young kids. They're their
Yeah,
20s or even younger.
even
That
younger guys.
amazes me.
I saw a couple videos with some girls that were 17,
Yeah.
18 years old. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And I say to them, not that I'm looking for, what do they call it? Humble, modest, humble. What's the phrase when you're kind of pretending to be humble, but you're really fishing
Oh,
for compliments? There's a
yeah.
phrase for that. It's a slang
Yeah, I don't know
expression.
what it is.
I forget. But I often say to them, why? What is it about me that reaches you? And the word they often use is authentic. Now, I'm not sure what that means because everyone's authentic. Everyone is themselves. I think maybe in my case, it means that they know I'm always honest, that
Right.
I'm sharing honest opinions, even sometimes opinions that don't make me look so great. I
Right.
mean, I open up to my own faults. I hope that I'm not, but maybe kids don't feel that they're surrounded by a lot of honesty these days. Do you think that's possible?
Oh, I think that you it's 100% accurate. I mean, because,
You
if
do?
especially if you look at social media, I mean, people are posting pictures that are supposed to be perfect of them, and nobody is perfect. Nobody wakes up and looks as perfect as they do all the time.
No, of course not. Of course not. And also, I feel a lot of it, they're there to sell stuff. They're there to make money.
Yeah.
It's really depressing to me. Sometimes you can ask a little kid nowadays, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" And they'll say, "An influencer."
Yeah.
They
Yes.
actually think of that. It's not a profession. I don't. This is not my profession. I'm a writer, an actor, a humorist. Those are my professions.
Right.
And the social media thing is just something I do as part of that bigger picture. But a lot of these kids, they get on and they're there to sell stuff, and they succeed. Some of them make millions
Yeah.
of dollars. I'm not in that category, but, they're there as shills. They're there as salespeople selling a lot of unnecessary makeup, unnecessary crap to
Yeah.
people who don't have the money and who don't need it.
Right. Exactly. So so what's the workload? I mean, how long does it take you to do these videos? And I know you have somebody that posts them and all that stuff, but what's the workload like?
Well, it's less than when I started for many years, I posted twice a day, and that was coming up with a lot of stuff. Uh, Now I just post once a day, and sometimes I skip a day in the week, so it's less stressful, but, I do it is a job, it is work. I think about it, I think about what I wanna say, I think about things that I dare not say because I don't want to invite any conflict or controversy or haters, but they're still out there. The haters will always find
Right?
they'll always find a
They always
reason
find
to
you.
hate, you
Right.
know? Um, and, uh, and I have people helping me. I mean, my husband shoots them, and I have somebody who helps with editing or suggesting stuff or dealing with the occasional brand offer from a company. So it is a job.
Yeah. Yeah, and again, I don't think people realize that it's not as simple as you wake up and say, I think I'm gonna do this today," and you film it, you edit, you put it up, and it just
No, I
happens.
keep lists of topics. I write down when I and the terrible thing with me, Tim, I get my best ideas either when I'm in the shower or when I'm taking a walk, and always when I have no access to my phone. So I get these great ideas. I come back, I go to my desk, and I blank. I can't remember what the genius idea was that I got. Eventually, they all come back, eventually, but it's very frustrating. I uh, but what's fun about it is I'm documenting my life, basically.
Yeah,
So whatever I do, wherever I am, if I'm eating an interesting meal, if I'm at an interesting party, if I just watch an interesting TV show, I document it. I share my thoughts about it for good
yeah,
or bad.
and then again, that's the authentic piece because it's good or bad, whatever it is.
Yes, occasionally I don't like to be too critical. I don't want to, uh, I don't want to be nasty. I don't want to be too critical. I try and stay with things. I try mostly and talk about things that I like rather than things that I hate.
Right,
Uh, eh,
right,
I don't wanna talk about a TV show I hate or a movie I hate.
mhm,
I don't need to be mean. I don't want when people come
right,
to me, I don't want them to come to a place of meanness,
exactly, and
although
it's
I'm really
very
good at being mean is my specialty. That's really what I'm good at. I should maybe start another channel just for that part of me. That I
the
would enjoy.
the mean channel. Oh boy. So you got into acting as when you were in your 30s.
I
Ha
was
have
late. I've been late with everything. I'm a late bloomer in every way. I mean, now I'm 86 and I wish I had the fun now and the activity now. I wish I'd had it when I was in my 40s or
Right.
50s. So I just have to live to be 100 so that I can, you know, keep growing. So maybe when I'm 100, I'll have the career that I should have had when I was 60.
Well, but again, you're I think things happen for a reason. They happen when they're supposed to happen, and you take it as it come. And if you're in that mindset of again within reason saying yes, good things are going to happen.
I think I mean, I don't know if I would agree that things happen for a reason. I can think of a lot of things that don't happen for a reason. We won't go into that. But, but I do think you're right in that, whatever happens, whenever it happens or doesn't happen, you have to use it and you still have to work at following your bliss. I've
Right.
always thought that I might be really funny and interesting. And I'll tell you something funny, Tim. I don't know if we talked about this or not. All my life, I have been criticized for being too talkative and too opinionated
Yeah.
and too blunt about my opinion, and I've always apologized for it. Also, as a woman, those are not attractive qualities. Traditionally, those are not attractive qualities in a woman.
Right.
And I've always felt bad, like, "Oh, why do I have such a big mouth? Why can't I control myself? Why can't I be more feminine? Blah, blah, blah." Now, with this new young audience, I am being celebrated for the very qualities that I
Yes.
was always criticized for, that I always apologized for. And it's another theme of my book, which is I tell people, now that I've learned this, I'm old enough to, to have learned this, do not be imprisoned by other people's negative opinions of you. And we all do that.
Yes,
'Cause we're
we do.
told, "You're too this, you're too that," and you apologize, "Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, I'm sorry." And we have to learn to say, "Oh, really? You think I talk a lot? You're quite right. And maybe you should listen to what I have to say. You might
How
get
about that?
something out of it."
Exactly.
Instead of apologizing.
Yeah. Yeah, and, the way I approach it is, well, thanks for your input, but I don't live my life based on what you think of me, that's
Well, I wish I
that's
had that confidence at your young age. I wish I had had that confidence.
but I do try and teach that to my kids and the younger audience that I'm working with because, like you said, if we spend all of our lives worried about what other people think about us and say about us, we'll
Yeah.
never get out of that rat race, and we'll never truly become who we are supposed to
Who we
become.
are meant to be. I
Right.
totally agree, but it's hard when you're young. When you wanna be popular, you wanna be liked, you wanna please, and it's even harder for women. I
Yeah.
had an interesting conversation the other day. I had a doctor's appointment, and with my adult brain, for some reason, I went to the wrong doctor. Their names are similar, uh, and, uh, um, and I went to the wrong place, so, fortunately, the other office wasn't that far away, so I ran over, and I got in, and I said to this, "Oh, I'm so sorry, I'm late," and she put up her hand, and she said, "Annie, I'm in this office all day long, and the only people who say I'm sorry are women. Men come late, men come unwashed, men come without a men come forgetting the men never apologize. And I've decided in this law, I'm going to have a rule. Women cannot say, I'm sorry. Is that interesting?
It is, it really is, and you I've never really noticed that, but you're probably right, um, but I also think that it's at least for me, if I know that I'm in the wrong, so if I know that I'm late, the first thing I say is, "I'm sorry. Excuse me, it's my fault. If you can fit me in, great. If not, I
It
understand."
seems
But
to be the polite thing to
to
do,
do,
right?
right, right. Um, and you move and again, most of the time that happens, or when it does happen, it's no worries, just come on through and let's get you taken care of. But again,
Right.
there's that whole idea of of being polite as opposed to being entitled.
Yes, right. Right, exactly. Well, I think that again to the gender thing, I think women feel that men are entitled and that
Yeah.
women are not, that we still have to fight for privileges that men assume they have.
Right.
Anyway, I don't know if you want to get into that, but um but uh but more than that, as kids kids when you're bringing up kids, another thing is about other people's opinions. In Hollywood, I am considered unattractive. If a casting call went out today for an attractive older woman, I would never be seen. They would say, "You're a character actress," which is really a euphemism. I'm too ethnic looking, I'm too Jewish
Right.
looking. That's not
Right.
considered attractive in Hollywood. And so again, I internalized that, and all my life I have thought, "Well, I'm not very pretty. I'm not
Right.
very good looking." You know? Now, again, these same fans are telling me, "Oh, you're gorgeous. Oh, we love your
Right.
hair. We love your style. Oh, what's that lipstick? It looks so good on you. You're so beautiful." This is I'm in my 80s,
Uh-huh.
Tim.
Yeah.
This is the first time in my life that I am being told that I'm good looking. I have never heard this before.
Well, if you remember when we talked a couple weeks ago and you didn't realize that I was gonna be recording what it was, you said, "I don't look so good." I said, "Annie, you look beautiful." I mean, it's just you being you, and that's fine. And you said to me that, we have men have different, standards, and I think that's part of the issue. It's how we as society need to have that change in mindset. Stop worrying about all this other those other things
Right,
and take people for who they are and how they show up on any given day, and how you show up
right.
today may be different than how you show up tomorrow because you never know what's going on in your life. So just accept people as
Absolutely.
they come to you.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. I totally agree.
So have you always been a good storyteller? I mean, your entire life, or was that something that you kinda learned
I
as you
think
as
I
you
have. I think
okay,
part of it was that feeling that I wasn't pretty, so I better develop my personality. I've always liked making people laugh. I've always liked, and as they say, I'm a talker. I've always been a good
right,
storyteller. So I always had that. I didn't realize, but you know how you take things for granted.
yeah,
Also, how I always hung out with people who were also like me. I don't
right,
hang out with quiet, restrained people. So I never thought it was anything special. It wasn't until recently that I realized, hey, I have a real gift here. I have
yeah,
real something. As a matter of fact, in my book, can I talk about my book? Should I
yeah,
show my book?
absolutely,
In my book, the book happens as a result of my TikTok popularity. The book is called The Book of Annie, Humor, Heart, and Chutzpah from an Accidental Influencer. And now I forgot the point I was going to make about in my book, I tell some that my book is a collection of stories, mostly fun, some a little more, as you say, a little more dramatic, a little more poignant. Uh, but I have been telling stories and writing stories for so long now that it's funny when I got the contract to write the book, I really just plagiarized for myself. I went back into my files and I found all these stories that I've been telling over the years and put them together. I had the material there, which is
yeah,
one of the nicer things about growing older. You have a body of work behind you.
right.
You've been doing something all your life. It's there. It doesn't die. It's not wasted. And all of a sudden, I had a book there.
And, you're the second person in the last couple weeks who has said that's how their book came about. I interviewed somebody a few weeks ago, who took episodes from his podcast and wrote the book. And there's that ton of that information that's out there as content creators that we have, and doing what you did is it's it's not that it's easy, but it's something that people don't necessarily think about all the time. They think they've gotta start from scratch and start writing a book from scratch, but, you can
Oh,
go
not
back on all of
necessarily. You're
your
not always
yeah,
starting with a blank page because
right.
you've got material in your background,
Yeah,
right? Even
yeah,
if you kept a diary or a journal or something, there's material there.
exactly. And so you
Yes,
ble
me.
bless you. You
Thank you.
you also recently taught a college class on storytelling. What was that like for you?
Yeah, that was interesting. It's funny that you bring that up because they just called and asked me back, which I'm very
Good.
pleased about. It was much different. I've never taught, I teach writing. And I taught it for a while, and I teach what I do, the personal essay, creating and performing the personal essay. So that's like, between 5 and 1,500 words, right? It's a short,
Okay.
personal, humorous story. And but I've always taught it to older people and people who've done some writing. Teaching these college kids was different because number 1, that generation, they're so addicted to their screens.
Yeah.
They're not used to just talking to
Talking.
people, to making
Right.
eye contact with an audience
Oh
and
boy.
telling a story to an audience. This was
Right.
a new thing for them. Um, Also, I gave what I thought was a very easy prompt. I said, "Okay, everybody get up and tell a story about how you survived." Now, these are the kids in their 20s, right?
Right.
How did you survive the worst thing that ever happened to you? And make it funny.
Oh
That was the
gosh.
prompt.
Okay.
They couldn't do it. They had no, and I figure at 20, they've experienced divorce or a death of a grandparent or a breakup of a romance. They must have experienced something painful in
Traumatic.
their lives,
Right.
right? They
Right.
couldn't, one kid got up and said, "Well, I had a crush on this girl, but then I heard she was homophobic, so I didn't like her anymore." That was the worst thing they could come up with. And then when I was talking to some of the other teachers about it afterwards, they said, "You have to remember that generation went through high school in lockdown.
Yeah.
So they weren't bullied. They didn't get asked or not asked to prom. They didn't suffer at being not in the popular group. So in a way, not only did they miss a lot of good stuff, they also missed a lot of the painful stuff that makes you grow during
Right.
those formidable forming high school years.
Right. Which helps you deal with a lot of things. Right. Dealing with painful things helps you get through life. Dealing with positive things helps you deal
Absolutely.
with getting through life. And it's and part
Not only that, but also I felt that I don't know how to explain it. I'm a big believer in failure.
Yeah.
I think you have to fail at stuff, and I have a lot of
Mhm.
stories in my book about that, about my various I've failed enough to fill several books, but I think there's something about this generation that they haven't been allowed to fail.
Right.
If they fail, somebody says, "Oh, it's okay. We'll pass you anyway in the class. Oh, it's
Uh,
okay. You'll still get your birthday, even though you killed the cat." They say, "Oh, we're very disappointed," but I mean I feel now. I maybe this makes me sound like an old fashioned fuddy duddy. I don't get the feeling that kids are being made to feel responsible for their behavior. And then if you become a person, a grown-up who's like that, that's not such a great thing to have a country of
exactly.
citizens who feel no responsibility
For
when
anything.
they mess up.
Right. Right. It's okay. But I messed up, so it's okay. We're just gonna move on and never actually clean up the mess.
Yeah,
The mess just
yeah,
stays
somebody
there.
else has to, right.
Clean it up.
And
Right.
also, I always none of us trust politicians, but
No.
I would love someday to hear a politician say, "There's one big mistake I made while I was in office. There's one big
Uh,
mistake I made in my career. If I could undo it, I would." When have
right.
you ever heard any
Never.
of them say that?
Never. Never.
You know?
They double down on it
Yeah,
and
exactly. That's the right phrase. They double down on it, right? I did it and I'm proud and it wasn't so bad and it was a good, I
it's
they
infuriating.
never admit to being human.
Right. Right. Yeah. The only people in the world never made a mistake are politicians.
Right, right,
You know?
right.
Oh, it's insane. Yeah, Annie, don't get me started on our politicians.
No, we don't wanna go
You know,
there.
don't wanna go there. We're gonna have a good time today. So, so what actually makes a good storyteller?
I think honesty, vulnerability, and, the big thing when I teach storytelling, what a lot of people don't understand is there's a difference between a humorous anecdote and a story.
Right.
An anecdote is fun. I was on this plane. Oh, and I was sitting next to George Clooney, and he said this, and I said that. It was so great. That's a fun story. Everybody wants to hear it, but it's not. But it's an anecdote. The story version of that, I was on this plane. I was sitting next to George Clooney, and he said this, and then at the end, I realized afterwards that he had been just as scared of that turbulence as I was. And it was nice to know that I'm not alone in my fears, that no matter how rich and in other words, if you come to some conclusion
Conclusion,
at
right.
the end of your journey, you learn something at the end.
Yeah.
So in all my stories, I learned some I was against my son's wedding, and at the end, I loved it. I thought I knew how to be the perfect mother. I was totally wrong. I messed up in every possible way, but I ended up learning something about that. So it's where the journey it's the I think Ira Glass calls it at the end, the moment of reflection at the end.
Yeah.
What did I get out of this? And then, of course, what is your audience gonna get out of it? How
Exactly.
is your audience gonna be inspired by
Inspired
your
by it.
journey?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm glad you said some of those things because as I was reading the book, there was a couple things that really, touched me. And one, I don't think that there was more than a page went by where you didn't talk about your family, whether it was Benny or your son or his your daughter-in-law or your grandson. And
Right.
for me, when I tell stories and I give presentations and those types of things, that's what I'm talking about me, I'm talking about my family, I'm talking about, the things that happen in my life because those are the things that are important to me, right? And
Right.
I think there has to be another level of vulnerability to be able to bring your family into these stories because that really truly kind of opens up who we are as individuals, and the audience can get a better sense of who we actually are.
I think that's very wise of you, and I think it is important. And a lot of times, how shall I say? I judge family. Again, we go back to politicians. I judge people on how they treat their family.
Yeah.
And also how they've been treated. It gives me some insight, into I heard a very interesting thing once, and I've kept it as a standard. I heard an interview with Ron Reagan,
Okay.
this one of the
The
children
sons.
of President
Right,
Reagan.
right.
I happen to know the daughter. I know her so well that I can't remember her name, but she's also a writer and a storyteller, and we've sometimes been on the same story. But Ron Reagan said, the thing about my family was in most families, the family life is focused on the children
Right.
to keep them safe, to keep them happy, to keep them doing. In my family, everything was focused on my father to keep him comfortable, to keep him, able to function, to keep him. And so when I thought about that, I started looking around at other families that I know, and I could see in some families it's about the father.
Huh.
Daddy's home, daddy makes the money, daddy's gotta be kept calm, don't do
Interesting.
that, daddy wouldn't like that, and I know quite a few, uh, as a matter of fact, more so, I would have to say in wealthy families, it's about the father and keeping him happy, keeping him comfortable, and in other, I would say, healthier families, it's about the children.
That's kids.
And
Wow,
and it and
that's
it's
interesting.
interesting to sort of study various families that
Uh-huh.
way. It gives you an insight into how people are brought up.
Yeah, I never really looked at it like that, and I think that does probably answer some questions, uh, that I have about other people, right? I mean, because
Yeah,
I think if
yes.
everybody just did it the way I did it, the world would be a much better place to begin with, so just start doing it the way Tim does it, and everything will be good. But
And the funny thing is the some of the kids I know, now they're not kids anymore, but some of the people I know who were brought up in those kinds of families where everything was about the father's career, the father, da, 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 da. They actually went the other way as parents and became very devoted parents
yeah,
because they didn't want to repeat. They
right,
didn't want their kids to grow up the way they did.
right.
So sometimes that happens, and of course, sometimes, as we all know, that abusive parents end up the kids end up being abusive parents. That
Abusive, right,
happens as well.
right.
So it can go either way,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
But I
Y
agree with you that family is important. Family is important.
and a lot of times, at least for me, I use self-deprecating humor and everything's a joke and I try and make everything funny because that's just the way I am. But, you have a couple of stories in your book about some really hard things, and I like the way that they came across. Like your story about Miko. I was shocked. I mean, just reading that story about Miko
Wait a minute, a story about what? I didn't hear what you
ab
said.
about Miko, your nanny, your story about Miko and how
Oh!
yeah,
Well, that's
uh,
funny. Nobody ever mentions that story. I like it, but it's odd that that spoke to you. Okay.
well, because I'm the p and it's there's a train of thought there too, because your next story was when you were at the story house and that I'm not even that I don't even know what to call him, started making a joke about Anne Frank.
Right,
I
right,
mean
right, right, right.
how much of a low life
It's
do you have to
about
be to do
speaking
that?
up. When do you
Yeah.
speak up?
When do you speak
When do
up?
you stand up and speak up? And the thing
And
about Miko, who was my Swedish au pair, and she lived with us in New York, and she never met anyone like me, and she was embarrassed by me that I constantly
yeah,
that I criticized and, if I saw somebody on the street hitting his kid, I would go up and say, "Don't hit you're not allowed to do that," and whatever, and then she went back to Sweden, ended up being one of Sweden's most notorious whistleblowers. And she said she learned it from me. That was very sad, but it's funny, no one ever mentioned that story. I'm so glad that it meant something to you.
but I think it's so important, it's something that we're missing in society today, because we just let things go. We see things that are not right, and instead
Right,
of standing up and saying, "You know what? This isn't right. I don't care who it is,
right.
s be better, do better." We don't treat people this way. We don't we're not gonna do that. And if until at least it's in my opinion, because we're your story about Anne Frank, we're my wife is kinda dealing with something along those lines right now. Um,
Really?
yes, hard to believe, but yes. And, um, so we're kinda going through that right now and dealing with it and figuring out how we're gonna move forward with it, but the part of the problem is if as a society, we just continue to say, "Okay, we're not gonna step up, stand up, and stop it," we're gonna start repeating some of the same things, tragedies that have happened over and over and over again, and
I know, I know. It's too depressing. It's too depressing. But, uh, let me talk some more. Oh, I wanna say something about what we were saying before about haters and
yeah,
trolls.
yeah,
Um I've been very careful. I've tried deliberately not to provoke those kinds of but you can't avoid it.
right.
If you're in the public eye, if you're out there, somebody's gonna find as a matter of fact, some of them are actually funny. Some of them are so stupid. I had one where I did I did a TikTok, was what actually it got millions. It was one of my most heavily trafficked TikToks. It was something very simple. I'm just having a margarita and some guac and chips. And I say this in a sitting outside the cafe. And I say, is there anything better than ending the day like this? So very innocent, right? Just sharing a moment of pleasure and comfort. Do you know that somebody wrote, "Oh, typical white woman and her cultural appropriation." In other words, I shouldn't be eating I
No
sh
guac
that
no
maybe
guac for
only
you.
Mexicans should drink margaritas. So I wrote back and I said, "Well, I guess that only Jews should eat bagels and only French people should eat croissants and all." I mean, can you imagine how stupid that I was accused of being politically incorrect because I was celebrating with a margarita and some guac.
Yeah, oh my
I mean,
gosh.
that gets really but then some of them have been nastier. And, and so I did a TikTok about my feeling about haters, about trolls.
Right.
And I thought, what does it mean to be sitting, I'm assuming alone? You're sitting alone and you're spewing malicious insults to a total stranger who has
Yep,
never done you any harm. What does that mean about you? What does that say about you? And I said, when you do that, you are announcing to the world that you have not received enough love in your life. It's
yeah,
as simple as that.
exactly,
People who feel love, people who have gotten love, do not need to practice anonymous hatred the way those trolls do, right?
exactly, exactly, and that gets back to the whole point of why do we put any value in any of those types of comments of people? We don't they don't even know us, like, those comments to me aren't even valid. Yes, you can have those thoughts, and if you wanna say them, great, that's awesome, but they're not valid to me. Why am I even
No,
gonna entertain it?
no, they're not. I mean, I don't like to see it. I want of course, I have this fantasy
Yeah,
that everyone in the world is gonna love me at all times, which is not I don't think I can I doubt that I can achieve that. I already know that I can. But, it is a strange phenomenon to me,
yeah,
people who do that.
yeah. How about the when you're doing your storytelling, uh, talk about the research and the preparation that actually goes into that, because I also think that's something that's actually missed from the younger professionals' perspective when they, when they're in a meeting and they've got to do a presentation or they're telling a story or whatever. There's a lack of preparation and research. So can you talk about that a little bit?
Well, it's funny that you should say that because I think the lack of preparation for most people when they want to impress somebody and they're going into a meeting, let's say, or a job interview
Yeah,
or something of that nature, they make the mistake of thinking that they should take up the whole time talking about themselves and their qualifications and their accomplishments. It's just the opposite. You should do your preparation by researching
the other
the
person.
person is going to interview. My first piece that I sold to the New York Times, I seem to recall I researched that editor. I found a piece he wrote that really resonated with me. And when I sent in my piece, I said, by the way, I was very impressed with your article about so and so I've experienced. In other words, I talked about his work.
Right.
Okay. And I've done that. I've used that technique and not in a phony way. I don't mean just empty, you know,
Yeah.
flattery, but genuine respect and appreciation of the other person's accomplishments.
Right.
You're not there just to sell yourself. You're there to make a friend, to make a contact, to make the other person, to make a connection. I mean, literally to connect with the other person. And what better way to do that than to really know about them and what they've done and what you admire about them. And I think so many people miss that. They think they're going in to give a sales pitch about me, me, me. That's not the case. You look like you agree with that.
I would 100% agree with it. It's never about me, it's always about you, it's always about the audience, it's always about everything other than that, and, um,
You know?
but I
And also, it's like you're talking I mean, you're called speaking with confidence,
yeah,
and, it's like, let's say you have to give a speech,
yeah,
whether it's a wedding or a funeral or a graduation or something. Uh, I think people forget that's where the power of storytelling really comes in.
yeah,
So if you don't know how to give a speech, you don't know what to say about this person. Sometimes people say, "Oh, I have to speak at my brother's wedding. I'm not sure." I said, "It's simple. Tell the funniest story you can remember about him, and the sweetest story you can
yeah,
remember about him. Just those 2 things would give you enough material for a great wedding speech,
yep,
right?
that's it, yeah. So so my youngest daughter, and it's funny because she worked in the wedding industry for a while, and I was she was in the wedding industry for a while, so she was a wedding planner and sold wedding dresses and that sort of thing.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and so at one point, she was selling wedding dresses where the taxes on the dress were over $1,000. That's how expensive these dresses were. And when she got married, so she's buttoned up, right? She's got it, you know, timelines, this, that, and the other thing, and she said, "Dad, you've got 4 minutes for your speech." And I said, Let me tell you something, honey. I'm taking as much time as I want. I'm taking 35 minutes." And she
What? Are you
I
serious?
do. I no, I that's what I told her. I'd 5 minutes is what I took. Uh, I was just giving her a hard time, and I said, "They're gonna sit there and listen to me talk about you for 35 minutes. You're my
Ah,
youngest child."
oh my
It
god.
it 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 was hilarious, so,
Yeah.
but,
5 minutes is the perfect time
yeah,
for a speech, you
yeah, so
know? How many times have we suffered through and oh, and then the end of the cliches. I mean, every time, unfortunately, I'm going to more funerals now
Yeah.
than I would like to, but that's become a, and if I have to sit through one person say, and I know he's looking down on us, you don't know that. You don't know if someone's looking down. You don't know where they are, if they are, or if they're maybe looking up at it, and that one always get, I know he's looking down on us and enjoying it. I mean,
He
you
he's probably
know,
in the back he's probably in the back of the room laughing at you is probably what
is
they're
that
doing.
right? That's what I keep saying. I wanna be there for my funeral. I wanna plan it. I wanna plan the menu and the music, and I wanna hear the speeches. I wanna be there.
Yeah, I saw a YouTube or whatever video or whatever, and it said if you wanna mess with your friends, when you die at your funeral, have one of your friends text people, "Thanks for coming," from your phone.
That's really
That is
funny.
funny. Isn't that funny?
Oh, that
That's
is
funny.
that's a wild idea. I like that. But, funerals are done right, or nowadays they call them celebrations
Listen,
of life. If they're
yeah,
done right, they can be quite remarkable, quite
right.
wonderful, very moving, very satisfying. I mean, anything, it's another thing I talk about in the book. I'm not a big believer in the rules and traditions. I think we have to find our own way.
Right.
And there's all kinds of ways to celebrate, for example, a wedding, and there's all kinds of ways to celebrate to mourn a loved one.
Loss. Right.
And they don't have to follow the conventions.
Exactly.
You can do your own thing. You can be inventive and do what would make sense for that for the person who's not there anymore, or for the what's really important is, weddings are not for the dead. They're for, I mean, funerals. I always do that. Isn't that what would Freud say? I always mix up those two words, weddings and funerals. Oh my God. Um But that was one of the reasons one of my serious stories about my postpartum depression was because I didn't feel I was following the rules, and therefore I must have been a failure as a mother
Right. Right.
because I couldn't have natural childbirth, and I couldn't breastfeed, and all those things that we were told you had to
Had
do,
to do.
and if you didn't do them, your child would suffer for the rest of their lives, and it made me crazy. I was literally hospitalized for the first 3 or 4 months of my child's life because I felt I had failed, and I didn't have anyone to say to me, "Hey, do what works for you. You
Exactly.
can't breastfeed, as long as you love the baby, all of those other things don't matter."
Right. Right. You're
It's the love, and now, as a matter of fact, I am the world's best mother. I have the world's best relationship with my son. We're very close. Unfortunately, he lives on the other coast, but we talk at least 2 or 3 times a week. I have people, I don't understand it, getting back to family. I have people who never hear from their kids. "Oh,
What
yeah,
they
we
do wrong.
talk, once a month, every couple of months." And I'm
No.
thinking, "What?
No.
That's not the way I live."
No. See, I
Uh,
talk to both my kids pretty much every day. If I go 2 days without talking to them, that means either they're on vacation, they're off doing something or whatever, but we have, like,
Yeah,
scheduled time.
if you want, it's an important connection, you wanna keep it going, and especially now that I have a grandchild, I wanna see what's going on with
Mhm.
him.
Yeah, and
Uh,
with technology, with FaceTime and all these other things, you know, I
yes, it's so
I
easy,
see
there's
them
so
2 or
much
3.
available.
Yeah, yeah,
Right, that's what we
so
do, we FaceTime.
it's awesome.
Um, and, so basically, what I talk about both on TikTok and in the Book of Annie. I'm
Uh-huh.
sitting in the Book of Annie, Humor, Heart, and Chutzpah from an accidental influencer. I talk about the subjects that I think are important, which means marriage, dating, family, career for women,
Yeah,
that life work balance, which is hard for women to achieve. Um, and then thrifting. Now, I didn't know, it's funny what we were saying before. If you're you and you do what do, you don't know how that's going to reach the universe out there. I
right.
was brought up poor. I was brought up in a tenement in a 3-room railroad flat in the Bronx. And so all of my life, I have treated money with a lot of respect. I do not waste it. I do not spend it. Money is something. And so I've always been a thrifter, always. So I started writing about thrifting just because it's a subject of interest to me. I did not know that thrifting is a big new trend in our
Yeah,
society,
it
that
is.
people are shopping secondhand and people are going to yard sales and thrift stores and estate sales. I've always done that. I didn't know that now everyone is doing it. And so I have a lot of experience with that. And not only do I thrift, but I've actually made money by selling some of the treasures that I
Yes.
find. Uh, and I had and still have a little side business of that. I deal in um, my husband did rare books for a while, but I do vintage fashion and art and collectibles. And these are just things that I pick up for a couple of bucks somewhere. I know are worth a lot more. So anyway, I talk about that, but I did not know that it was a trend, that I was walking into a very popular
Yeah,
trend.
yeah.
Uh, and it was kind of satisfying.
Yeah, that is something that is
Because again, it was
that
something people made fun of me for. You
right.
know what I mean? Oh, my friends like, how could you wear clothing that someone else has worn? Doesn't bother me. I mean,
Doesn't
I
bother me.
wash it,
Right,
I clean it.
right.
Uh, and now it's like, oh, how can you shop at how can you pay full price at a department store? It's like
Exactly,
that's the thing that's suspect.
exactly. Exactly. So, if you think about it, anybody that's really 29 years old or younger either was not born yet or has no real recollection of what happened on September 11th, 2001. You
Oh,
you were in the city when it happened.
yes, I
Ca
was.
can you tell us something that what did you take away from that experience that we as a society may have forgotten?
Well, you have to understand I'm a passionate New Yorker. I don't live there anymore. I live in
Right.
LA. I have a nice life here, but I'm not passionate about LA. New York is special to me. It always has been. And being there and one of the things I love about New York is how people connect with each other all the time. People think New York is being a cold and unfriendly place. It's quite the opposite. In New York, you could talk to someone on the bus, you could talk to someone sitting next to you at a restaurant. People talk to each other. When 9/11 happened, you had this feeling that it was one big community and everybody was out to help. The line, when it first happened, we didn't know at this point that there was no one to give blood to, but the line to donate blood at the local hospital was like 5 blocks long. Everyone was on that line. Everyone was when everyone was all the cafes were filled, the restaurants were filled. People wanted to be together. If you were in at one point, I was in a coffee shop on the Upper West Side, and a bunch of, firemen walked in their uniforms. I can't talk about this without getting a little teary.
Yeah.
Everyone stood up. Everyone stood up and applauded. Everyone I mean, there was just a feeling of, "We have to deal with this together."
Together,
And people
together.
would call each other, no one was alone. People would call a friend would call and say, "Hey, I'm making a chicken. You coming over?" I come over, there'd be dead people there. People wanted to be together. And, it was very emotional, but it was funny. I was in New York because I had a booking. I was doing a solo show at Queens College, uh, and I was scheduled for a week after the event.
Yeah.
So the producer said, "We don't know what to do, if we should cancel. We'll cancel the evening show, we'll just do the matinee. We'll hope that people show up." Not only did they show up, we were so overbooked. We could have done the evening show and 3 more shows that because New Yorkers, when they suffer, they want to suffer together. They came to my show because they wanted to laugh and
Right.
forget, right? Uh, So it was just a lesson in I don't know what you would call that, civic what. I was trying to think if it happened in
Right.
LA, would it be the same? It wouldn't be the same
Wouldn't be the same.
because of cars. In New York, you're on the subway. People would talk to each other on buses. They would talk to each other on the subway. And the word was it was kind of a code word if you would run into someone that you knew, which happens all the time in New York. You walk down the street or in the supermarket, you meet somebody from the neighborhood, uh, you would say, "Is everybody okay?" That was kind of the way of saying, "Have you been affected?" You
Right.
know?
Oh, yeah. Oh,
And
God,
I
yeah.
knew some people that were not okay.
Okay. Yeah.
Um, but it was a horrible time, but it was also very inspiring, and it also I am a snob, I am an intellectual snob, and until that time, I never thought much about it, but I didn't really have all that much respect for men in uniform. You know, if I had a daughter and she married a cop or a fireman, I don't think that would make me too happy. That changed because those guys ran towards the
Right.
disaster. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I get a
No, Andy,
little
it's
and now every time I see one of them, a cop or a firefighter, something in me sends out a feeling of respect and
yeah,
gratitude. And they lost so much. They lost
you
their
did.
friends, they lost their colleagues.
Yeah.
You know, uh, I had friends in the who were, therapists, and they went around and volunteered time. They would go to the firehouses, police, precincts, and they would say, "Does anyone need to talk to me?"
Yeah.
You know, they would just do that.
That's
People just said, "Whatever I can do." I had a friend who went down and made sandwiches for so it was just that feeling of people. I guess other countries, they say that's what England was like during the Blitz. They always talk
right.
about that during the London Blitz where people
Right.
had to and I don't think of the English being that way, being
Right.
warm and fuzzy and
No, not at all.
making
Right.
connections with strangers, you know, but they did. Now I'm
Why?
crying. I'm
I'm
gonna lose
sorry.
my eye.
I'm sorry. You still look beautiful. Well, Annie, thank you so much for that, and I think that's a good place to end it. Where can people buy the book, and where can they find you?
Oh, please, go on Amazon. It's the Book of Annie. They also have them. I think you can order them at Barnes& and Noble. And also I'm gonna ask all your I keep forgetting to ask this. I because YouTube may not because TikTok may not continue, we never know. Please, if people wanna hear what I have to say, go to YouTube. I now have a channel. I just started. It's
Yeah.
called Annie Korzen Videos. So please, please, please subscribe to Annie Korzen Videos on YouTube. It's a new venture, and you could hear more of my brilliant, witty
Yeah, they're
thoughts.
some of them are just informational, some of them make me really are really funny, make me laugh, and you know, they're great, and Annie, actually, that's where I've been watching videos from is YouTube. So, you know,
Yes, it's
if you're
Annie
getting
Corson videos
likes
on
or
YouTube, and
yeah,
it's A Corson on TikTok.
well, and I'll put all those links in the show notes. Annie, thank you so,
Oh,
so much
great. Thank you
for
so
today.
much.
I
Oh, it
I
was
really do
great. I love
appreciate it.
talking to you, Tim.
So, well, it's, I think we're kindred spirits.
I
So,
do too.
what you take care, and we'll talk again soon.
Excellent.
Be sure to visit speakingwithconfidencepodcast.com to get your free ebook, The Top 21 Challenges for Public Speakers and How to Overcome Them. You can also register for the Forming for Public Speaking course. Always remember, your voice has the power to change the world. We'll talk to you next time. Take care.